After nearly 6 years of development, Perfect Dark Zero is finally upon us. A title that started back on the N64 in 2000 as Perfect Dark, and actually before that as GoldenEye. This series has always been known as a great shooter, and in the development time over 6 years, it hasn't exactly aged all that well. Basically, this game can be broken up into single-player and multiplayer components. To start with, the single-player. Fans of the original will be familiar with the format here. It's mission-based. You'll have approximately 13 missions, and depending on which difficulty level you play the game at, it could take you anywhere from about 10 hours to longer. The game really changes depending on which difficulty setting you have it on. At Agent, which is the easiest, you can breeze through no problem. On Perfect Agent, which is 2 above that, you'll really have to be able to memorize enemy positions, and you'll also get a whole bunch of different objectives, and it really changes how the game plays. The good points about the single player, aside from the varying gameplay depending on difficulty level, are the huge action sequences that you'll happen upon during your course through the game. Specifically, one example of this is a bridge sequence near the end where it's just an absolutely gigantic setting with tons of enemies that you need to fight, and it's a really engaging experience and representative of the height of Perfect Dark's single player experience. However, there are a number of problems with Perfect Dark single player. Mostly this is the enemy AI. It feels very, very similar to the N64. There's still security cameras. You can still get caught by security teams that will flow in as soon as you're detected, and they'll just run straight at you. There aren't any advanced squad tactics here. Basically, to avoid them, you can just go run and hide and wait for them to come through the door, at which point you can just shoot them in the head. This makes it feel like no advances have really been made in the enemy AI. Although they will occasionally run away from you and maybe take cover behind a column or two, they're not going to do anything impressive. And given the 6 years of development and how it's 2 console generations later now, you would have expected maybe something a little more advanced than almost the same thing.
Don't say it. Don't say extraterrestrial or alien or xenobiological.
Another problem with the single player is the storyline. The storyline is just bad. I mean, there's really no redeeming factor there. It's laughably bad. It sort of spoils the cohesion of the single player game just because you don't really have a clear idea of what you're doing or specifically why you're doing it. You'll know generally what your goals are, but there's really no character in the game, and there's not a lot of sense of motivation for you to move through. You don't really get involved with the characters. Some new moves that have been added to the game are a combat roll, a melee attack, both of which work really well, and there's also a cover move. Basically, to do a cover move, you'll just move up behind an object, and once you're in a specific location, a prompt comes up at the top of the screen to hit the A button. Once you hit the A button, you'll put your back to the structure, and you can fire out from around corners at enemies in front of you. This works really well once you're actually in cover, but actually getting into cover is a problem because once you approach an object, there's a slight delay and you can't go into cover until you see the prompt. So in frenzied situations where there's tons of gunfire coming at you, you're not going to be able to get into cover as quickly as you should be able to. Graphics in the game are really good in general, though one problem that I found was just there are too many things that reflect in the game, and a lot of areas it works in, such as areas with metal walls or things that are supposed to reflect, but if you're in an ancient ruin sort of area, you don't expect rocks that haven't been wet in hundreds of years to suddenly glisten as soon as you walk by them. That being said, the weapon models look great, they look extremely realistic, and that's a good thing in a game where you're going to be staring at it the whole time. The enemy animations are good when they're getting shot, though not particularly great when they're just running around. It's a really cool effect to see all their armor flying off of them, however unrealistic it is. And they hold up really well online. Overall, I did like Perfect Dark's graphics, except for the presentation and some strange color choices. And I really wish the game ran at 60 frames a second, but aside from that, it's still one of the better looking games on the Xbox 360. Aside from the single player, there's also the huge multiplayer component in Perfect Dark Zero. This is definitely, without a doubt, the best part of the game, and the reason that you should go out and buy this game is because there's just an absolutely vast number of options available for you. Specifically, in terms of game modes, there's capture the flag, there's kill count, team kill count, you can do cooperative over Xbox Live, and there's also a Counter-Strike style Dark Ops mode, which has eradication and 2 other modes in addition. After being able to go on Xbox Live after the system launch, that really helped out just because it proved that this game was a ton of fun to play online. It's really fast-paced, and you really have to be accurate with your guns to be successful and properly use the cover the roll and the melee options in combination to get a high score and help your team win. This is going to be a multiplayer that's going to be around for a while, especially with more content coming down the pipe through Xbox Live Marketplace. So while the single player in Perfect Dark feels a lot like it did in the N64 version, it's still good. It's just not as good as the multiplayer components, whether you go split screen, co-op, anything over Xbox Live, and the bots are fun to play against too. It's just a great multiplayer experience, and that's really the reason to buy this game. This is, you know, the best multiplayer game you're going to find on the Xbox 360 at launch.